The rain fell like broken prayers over the cemetery, and through the mist, Daniel saw the one man who had sworn his daughter was dead, kneeling at her grave, sobbing like a child. The bus groaned to a stop 3 blocks from Evergreen Cemetery, and Daniel Carter stepped off into the drizzle, his daughter's small hand warm in his. Lily was 6 now, with her mother's dark curls and the same stubborn tilt to her chin that had made him fall in love 8 years ago. "Daddy, is Mama sleeping in the pretty garden?" Lily asked, her yellow raincoat, a thrift store find, 2 sizes too big, flapping around her knees. "Something like that, sweetheart," Daniel said, his throat tight. He adjusted the single white rose tucked under his arm, the only one he could afford this month. The rest of his paycheck from the hardware store had gone to Lily's asthma medication and the overdue electric bill. They walked through the iron gates, past rows of granite headstones that gleamed like teeth in the gray morning. Daniel had been coming here every Sunday for 3 years, since the day Rebecca's heart had given out, sudden and cruel, leaving him with a kindergartner and a grief so vast it had its own weight. Rebecca, his Becca, the girl who'd walked away from a mansion to live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a construction worker who dreamed too big and earned too little. Her father, Victor Harrington, had made sure she knew the cost. "You marry him, you're no daughter of mine," he'd said at their tiny courthouse wedding, his voice sharp as a blade. And he'd meant it. Not a call, not a card, not even when Lily was born, purple-faced and wailing, perfect. Rebecca had cried that night, holding their newborn, whispering, "He'll come around. He has to." He never did. Daniel's jaw tightened as they approached Rebecca's grave, a modest stone beneath an oak tree, paid for by 3 months of overtime and a loan he was still chipping away at. He'd carved the inscription himself, "Rebecca Carter, beloved wife and mother. She loved with her whole heart." But as they rounded the bend in the path, Daniel froze. Someone was already there. A man knelt before Rebecca's grave, his shoulders hunched, his silver hair dark with rain. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daniel's car, now sold to cover funeral expenses. In his trembling hands he clutched a bouquet of white lilies, Rebecca's favorite, so large it looked like a wedding arrangement. And he was crying. Not quiet tears, deep, guttural sobs that shook his whole frame, the kind of crying that came from a place you couldn't come back from. Victor Harrington. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He hadn't seen the man in 8 years, not since Victor had looked at Rebecca across that courthouse lobby and said, "You're choosing poverty over family. Don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost." Livy tugged his hand. "Daddy, who's that man?" Daniel's mouth was dry. Part of him wanted to turn around, to shield Lily from this, from him. But another part, the part that still heard Rebecca's voice in the dark, whispering, "He's just scared of losing me," kept his feet rooted. Victor's head jerked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, neither man moved. Victor's face was ravaged, red-rimmed eyes, deep lines etched around his mouth, a brokenness that made him look a decade older. Daniel had imagined this moment 1,000 times, always with anger, always with words sharp enough to cut. But standing here, watching this man crumble, all he felt was a hollow ache. "Daniel?" Victor rasped, his voice barely audible over the rain. Daniel said nothing. His grip on Lily's hand tightened. Victor's gaze dropped to Lily, and something in his expression shattered further. Is that?" "Her name is Lily," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "She's 6. Victor's knees seemed to buckle. He stared at Lily like she was a ghost, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The bouquet slipped from his hands, white petals scattering across the wet grass. Lily tilted her head, studying him with the unfiltered curiosity of a child. "Are you sad about Mama too?" The question hit like a lightning strike. Victor's face crumpled and a sob tore out of him, raw, animal. He pressed a hand to his mouth, but it didn't stop the sound. Daniel's chest constricted. He'd hated this man for so long, blamed him for every struggle, every moment Rebecca had stared out their tiny kitchen window with that faraway look. But watching him now, broken in the rain, Daniel saw something else. A father who'd lost his daughter and had no one to blame but himself. "We should go," Daniel said quietly, turning to lead Lily away. "Wait!" The word was barely a whisper, but it stopped Daniel cold. Victor looked up, his face a mask of anguish. I'm sorry." The rain drummed harder, filling the silence between them. What would you do if you were Daniel? Could you forgive someone who abandoned your family when you needed them most? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear what you think.
Daniel stood frozen, the single white rose still clutched in his hand, wilting in the rain. Victor Harrington, the man who'd built a real estate empire, who'd never apologized for anything in his life, was on his knees in the mud, begging. "I'm sorry," Victor repeated, his voice cracking like old wood. "God, I'm so sorry." Lily's hand slipped from Daniel's. Before he could stop her, she took 3 small steps toward Victor, her yellow raincoat bright against the gray morning. "Why are you sorry?" Victor's eyes, Rebecca's eyes, Daniel realized with a jolt, fixed on his granddaughter. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His hands trembled as they reached toward her, then fell back, as if he had no right to touch her. "Lily," Daniel said softly, a warning. But Lily had Rebecca's fearlessness. She crouched down, small and earnest, until she was eye level with the broken billionaire. "Did you know my mama?" A sound escaped Victor, half laugh, half sob. Yes, sweetheart, I knew her." His voice dropped to a whisper. "She was my little girl." Lily's eyes widened. "Your mama's daddy?" Victor nodded, unable to speak. "Then why didn't you come see us?" The question was innocent, curious, devastating. "Mama used to cry sometimes. She said she missed her daddy." The words landed like stones. Victor's face drained of color, and he pressed both hands against the ground, as if the earth might swallow him whole. I was a fool. A proud, stupid fool." Daniel's throat burned. He remembered those nights, Rebecca curled on their second-hand couch, staring at her phone, waiting for a call that never came. She'd never said it aloud, but he'd known. She'd hoped. Even after everything, she'd hoped her father would choose her. "She called you," Daniel heard himself say, his voice rough. "The night Lily was born, she called you from the hospital." Victor's head snapped up, his eyes wide with horror. I didn't." "You hung up. Didn't even let her say her name." The confession hung in the air, ugly and true. Victor's face contorted, and he covered it with his hands. I know. I heard her voice, and He choked on the words. "I was so angry, so goddamn angry that she'd chosen you over everything I'd built, over the life I'd planned for her. I thought if I stayed away long enough, she'd realize her mistake. She'd come back." "She was never coming back," Daniel said quietly. "She loved me. She loved us." "I know that now." Victor's hands dropped, revealing a face carved with regret. "I knew it 3 years ago, when I got the call that she'd..." He couldn't finish. His gaze shifted to Rebecca's headstone, to the simple words Daniel had etched there. "I wasn't even at her funeral. I didn't know until 2 weeks after. My assistant saw the obituary." The admission sucked the air from Daniel's lungs. He'd wondered, in the dark corners of his grief, if Victor had known. If he'd chosen to stay away even then. "I've been coming here every week since then," Victor continued, his voice hollow. "Every Sunday morning. I bring her flowers, I talk to her, I tell her all the things I should have said when she was alive. I tell her I was wrong, that you were the one who loved her the way she deserved. Not me." Daniel's vision blurred. The anger he'd carried for 8 years, the rage that had kept him warm through cold nights and empty mornings, began to crack. Lily reached out and touched Victor's hand. "Don't be sad. Mama's not really gone. Daddy says she's in here." She pressed her small palm against Victor's chest, right over his heart. Victor's face crumbled completely. He looked at Daniel, his eyes pleading, broken. "I don't deserve to ask this. I know I don't. But please let me know her." His gaze dropped to Lily. "Let me know my granddaughter. Let me try to be the man Rebecca thought I could be." The rain softened to a whisper. Somewhere in the cemetery, a bird began to sing. Daniel looked at Lily, at Rebecca's eyes, Rebecca's smile, Rebecca's generous heart already reaching toward this shattered old man. He thought of all the times Becca had said, "People can change, Danny," Everyone deserves a second chance. She believed that, even when her father had given her every reason not to. This is the moment everything changes. Should Daniel give Victor a second chance, or are some betrayals too deep to forgive? What would Rebecca want? Tell me what you think in the comments. Daniel's voice came out hoarse, measured. One chance. Victor's head jerked up, disbelief flooding his features. One chance, Daniel repeated, his grip tightening on the wilted rose. But you don't get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened. You don't get to throw money at us and call it love, and if you hurt her. His eyes dropped to Lily, who was watching them both with wide, curious eyes. If you hurt my daughter, the way you hurt your own, I will make sure you never see her again. Do you understand? Victor nodded frantically, tears streaming down his weathered face. Yes, I understand. Thank you. God, thank you. Lily beamed, oblivious to the weight of the moment. Does this mean I have a grandpa now? The word grandpa hit Victor like a physical blow. His mouth trembled, and for a moment Daniel thought the old man might collapse entirely. Instead, Victor reached into his jacket with shaking hands and pulled out a handkerchief, dabbing at his eyes. I would be honored, he whispered, if you'd let me. Can he come have pancakes with us, Daddy? Lily asked, turning to Daniel with that hopeful expression that made it impossible to say no to anything. Mrs. Chen from downstairs taught me how to make them fluffy.
Daniel's jaw tightened. Their apartment was barely 800 square feet, with peeling linoleum and a kitchen table that wobbled unless you shoved a folded napkin under one leg. The thought of Victor Harrington, who probably ate breakfast on fine china in a penthouse overlooking the city, seeing how they lived made Daniel's pride bristle. But Lily was looking at him with Rebecca's eyes, and he heard his wife's voice again. Pride doesn't keep you warm at night, Danny. Love does. Pancakes sound good, Daniel said finally. The bus ride back was surreal. Victor sat stiffly in the seat across from them, looking utterly out of place in his $1,000 suit among the tired nurses and grocery store clerks heading home from night shifts. Lily chattered endlessly, telling her newfound grandfather about her school, her best friend Maya, her goldfish named Bubbles who died last month. We buried him in the park, Lily explained solemnly. Daddy made a little cross out of popsicle sticks. It was very beautiful. Victor listened to every word like it was scripture, his eyes never leaving her face. Once he glanced at Daniel, and there was such naked gratitude in his expression that Daniel had to look away. When they reached the apartment building, Daniel felt his stomach knot. The elevator had been broken for 3 weeks. They climbed 4 flights of stairs, Lily skipping ahead while Victor followed more slowly, his breath coming harder with each floor. We're at the top, Daniel said, perhaps more defensively than necessary. Better view. I'm sure it's lovely, Victor replied quietly. The apartment was exactly as they'd left it that morning, Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, dishes drying by the sink, Rebecca's favorite blanket still folded on the arm of the couch because Daniel couldn't bring himself to put it away. It smelled like coffee and cinnamon, small and worn and theirs. Victor stood in the doorway, and Daniel watched something shift in his face. The old man's eyes moved slowly across the space, the secondhand furniture, the library books stacked on the coffee table, the photos covering every available surface. Rebecca, young and laughing. Rebecca and Daniel on their wedding day, her in a simple white dress from a consignment shop. Rebecca holding newborn Lily, exhausted and radiant. She was happy here, Victor said, his voice barely audible. It wasn't a question, but Daniel answered anyway. Every single day. Victor's hand came up to cover his mouth. He moved toward the photos like a man in a dream, stopping in front of one Daniel had taken just weeks before Rebecca died. She was in the kitchen, flour on her nose, teaching 4-year-old Lily how to roll cookie dough. Both of them were laughing. I missed all of this, Victor whispered. I missed everything. Grandpa, come help me with the pancakes, Lily called from the kitchen, already making room in her heart. Victor turned to Daniel, his eyes red. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be enough. I thought about the first time he'd held Lily, terrified and clueless, certain he'd break her. I thought about the nights after Rebecca died, when he'd sat in the bathroom with his head in his hands, sure he couldn't survive another day. But Lily needed breakfast. Lily needed her shoes tied. Lily needed someone to tell her it would be okay. So he'd learned. You just show up, Daniel said. Every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Victor nodded slowly, something like resolve settling into his features. In the kitchen, Lily had already dragged a chair to the counter and was pulling out the mixing bowl. Victor rolled up his sleeves, Italian silk, I noticed, and joined her. Daniel watched from the doorway as the billionaire and the 6-year-old worked together, Lily bossily instructing him on proper measuring techniques, while Victor listened with the intensity of a student taking notes. No, Grandpa, you have to level it off. See, like this. Ah, I see. Level it off. Very important. Daddy always makes them too thin. We like them fat. Fat pancakes. Noted. Something warm and painful expanded in Daniel's chest. This is what Rebecca had wanted. Her father and her daughter together. Her two worlds finally meeting. His phone buzzed. A text from his boss. "Can you cover Miguel's shift tomorrow? Double time." Daniel glanced at the overdue bills magneted to the refrigerator, then at Lily, who was giggling as Victor tried to flip a pancake and nearly sent it to the ceiling. He typed back, "Yes." When Victor finally left 3 hours later, after pancakes, after Lily showed him every toy she owned, after she made him promise to come back soon, he paused at the door. "Daniel, I know I can't undo the past, but I want to help. With Lily's school, with the medical bills, with—" "We're fine," Daniel cut in, his tone sharper than intended. Victor's face tightened, but he nodded. "Of course. I'm sorry. If you ever need anything, I'll let you know." It was a lie, and they both knew it.
3 weeks later, everything fell apart. It started with Lily's cough, the wet, rattling kind that Daniel had learned to fear. By midnight, she was wheezing, her small chest heaving with each breath. Daniel grabbed her inhaler, but it was empty. The prescription refill sat on the kitchen counter, unpicked because he'd had to choose between that and keeping the lights on. "It's okay, baby," he whispered, pulling on her coat with trembling hands. "We're going to the hospital." The ER bill would destroy him. He knew it, but none of that mattered when Lily looked up at him with frightened eyes and said, "Daddy, I can't breathe good." 4 hours later, Lily was stable, sleeping in a hospital bed with an oxygen tube under her nose. Daniel sat beside her, his head in his hands, staring at the discharge papers that detailed a payment plan he had no idea how to meet. The doctor had been kind but firm. Lily needed a nebulizer at home. She needed her maintenance medications, not just the emergency inhaler. She needed consistent care. She needed things Daniel couldn't afford. His phone buzzed. Victor's name lit up the screen. The old man had been calling every few days, asking to visit, and Daniel had made excuses each time. "We're busy. Maybe next week. Lily has a lot of homework." The truth was harder. Watching Victor and Lily together hurt in ways Daniel hadn't anticipated. It reminded him of everything Rebecca had lost, every birthday and holiday her father had missed because of his pride. And it stirred up Daniel's own fears, that Victor's money, Victor's world might eventually make Lily see their small apartment and secondhand toys as not enough, that he might not be enough. Daniel let the call go to voicemail. The next morning, Daniel called in sick to work, another day's pay gone, and took Lily home. Mrs. Chen from downstairs brought soup. The mailbox brought more bills. And Lily, still pale and tired, asked the question that broke him. "Daddy, why doesn't Grandpa Victor come visit anymore? Did I do something wrong?" His heart cracked clean through. "No, baby. No, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why?" "Because I'm scared. Because I'm drowning and too proud to ask for help. Because I don't know how to let someone in without feeling like I'm failing." "It's complicated," he said instead. Lily's face fell, and she turned away, coughing softly. Daniel stared at his daughter, Rebecca's daughter, and heard her voice as clearly as if she were standing beside him. "Stop being stubborn, Danny. Stop pretending you can do everything alone. That's not strength. That's just fear." His hand shook as he picked up his phone. Victor answered on the first ring. "Daniel, is everything all right?" "No," the word came out raw. "No, it's not all right." Silence. Then, "Tell me what you need." And Daniel did. He told Victor about the ER visit, about the bills piling up faster than he could count them, about working double shifts and still falling behind. He told Victor about Lily's medication, about the nebulizer they couldn't afford, about lying awake at night terrified that he was failing the only piece of Rebecca he had left. He told Victor everything. When he finished, his throat was raw and his eyes burned. "I don't want your money," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't want charity, but I can't do this alone anymore. And Lily deserves better than a father who's too proud to ask for help. Daniel," Victor's voice was thick with emotion, "you've been doing this alone for 3 years. You've kept her fed, clothed, loved. You've given her everything that matters. But you don't have to carry this by yourself anymore. Please, let me help you. Not because you need it, but because I need it. Because being her grandfather means being yours too. It means being family." Family. The word lodged in Daniel's chest. "Rebecca would want this," Victor continued softly. "She'd want Lily taken care of. She'd want you taken care of. And she'd kick both of us for being too stubborn to accept what we're being offered. Second chances." Daniel let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "I'm coming over," Victor said. "Right now, and we're going to figure this out together, as family." When Victor arrived an hour later, he didn't come alone. He brought a nebulizer, a 3-month supply of Lily's medications, and something else, a large envelope. "Before you say no," Victor said quickly, holding up a hand, "just look." Daniel opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a trust fund document with Lily's name on it, enough to cover her education, her medical needs, her future, but there was something else too. Employment papers. I need a facilities manager for my properties, someone who knows construction, who's good with people, who I can trust. The pay is triple what you're making now, full benefits, and it's yours if you want it, not because of Lily, but because you've earned it. Daniel stared at the papers, then at Victor, then at Lily, who was peeking around the corner, her face brightening when she saw her grandfather. "Grandpa," she cried, running to him. Victor caught her, lifting her gently, his eyes closing as he held his granddaughter for the first time without fear of losing her. "Is this real?" Daniel whispered. Victor looked at him over Lily's head, tears streaming down his weathered face. "It's real. We're family, Daniel. Let me prove it. Let me be the father to you that I should have been to Rebecca. Please." And Daniel, exhausted, broken open, finally ready, nodded. "Okay. Okay."
6 months later, Daniel stood in the cemetery again, but this time, he wasn't alone. Lily skipped ahead on the familiar path, her new purple sneakers, bought without checking the price tag twice, splashing through puddles left by the morning rain. Victor walked beside Daniel, carrying an enormous bouquet of white lilies in one arm and a thermos of coffee in the other. "She insisted we bring you coffee," Victor said, a smile tugging at his mouth. "Said you always forget to eat breakfast before we come." Daniel accepted the thermos with a grateful nod. She's not wrong. They'd fallen into this rhythm. Sunday mornings at Rebecca's grave, the three of them together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. Always, they brought flowers. Rebecca's headstone looked different now. Victor had wanted to replace it with something grander, but Daniel had refused. Instead, they'd added a small granite bench nearby, engraved with words Lily had chosen. "Love doesn't end, it just changes shape." "Mama, we're here," Lily announced, placing her handful of dandelions, still her favorite despite Victor's protests that they were weeds, at the base of the stone. "Guess what? I got an A on my science project, and Daddy said we can get a new fish. I'm going to name him Bubbles 2. Victor carefully arranged his lilies beside her dandelions, and something about the contrast, wild yellow against elegant white, made Daniel's throat tight. Rich and poor, old and young, two different worlds learning to bloom in the same soil. "I brought the photos," Victor said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. They'd started this tradition a month ago, bringing pictures to show Rebecca what she was missing. Victor had opened his archives, boxes of photographs he'd kept locked away for years because looking at them hurt too much. Now they brought them here, laying them out on the bench, telling Rebecca's stories. Today's photos were from Lily's 7th birthday party last week. Victor had rented out an entire trampoline park, much to Daniel's initial horror, but Lily's joy had been worth swallowing his pride. There she was, mid-jump, her face split with laughter. There was Victor, attempting to bounce and looking thoroughly terrified. And there was Daniel, watching them both, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled in years. "She would have loved this," Victor said softly, studying the photo. "She would have loved seeing her father make a fool of himself on a trampoline." Daniel laughed. "She definitely would have recorded it for blackmail purposes." "Oh, Lily already did that." Victor pulled out his phone, and they watched the video together. Victor flailing, Lily cackling, Daniel eventually joining in despite his protests. This was what healing looked like, Daniel had learned. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy alongside it. Not forgetting, but remembering with love instead of anguish. "Daddy, Grandpa, come here," Lily called. She'd wandered to the oak tree where a robin had built a nest in the low branches. 3 baby birds peeped from inside, their mouths open, waiting. "Their mama takes care of them," Lily observed wisely, "even though they're loud and messy and probably annoying." "That's what parents do, sweetheart. We take care of our babies, no matter what." "Even when we make mistakes?" Lily asked. Victor's smile faltered. He glanced at Daniel, then knelt beside his granddaughter. "Especially then. The best parents are the ones who learn from their mistakes and try to do better." Lily considered this seriously. "Like how you made a mistake with Mama, but now you're doing better with me and Daddy?" The truth of it, delivered with a child's unflinching clarity, hung in the air. "Yes," Victor said, his voice rough. "Exactly like that." Lily threw her arms around his neck. "I forgive you, Grandpa. Mama would too. She told Daddy once that everybody deserves second chances." Victor's eyes found Daniel's over Lily's shoulder, and in that moment, Daniel saw everything. The grief,
the gratitude, the fierce love of a man desperately trying to make up for lost time. She did say that, Daniel confirmed quietly. All the time. Later, after they'd said their goodbyes to Rebecca and Lily had run ahead to the parking lot, Victor stopped Daniel with a hand on his arm. "I've been thinking about the house." Daniel tensed. They'd moved out of the apartment 3 months ago into a modest 2-bedroom that Victor had helped with the down payment for, a compromise they'd both agreed on. Daniel covered the mortgage, Victor had simply made it possible. "The estate house," Victor continued, "the one Rebecca grew up in. It's been sitting empty since I moved downtown, but I was going to sell it, but I think Rebecca would want Lily to have it, to grow up there. There's a big backyard, good schools nearby, room for that dog she keeps asking for." Daniel's first instinct was to refuse, but he'd learned something in the past 6 months. Accepting help wasn't weakness. It was trust. It was family. "On one condition," Daniel said. "Anything. You visit. Often. Sunday dinners, holidays, random Tuesdays. You don't just give us a house, you fill it. You be there." Victor's eyes glistened. "I'd like nothing more." They shook hands, and then, awkwardly at first, then with growing certainty, they embraced. "Thank you," Victor whispered, "for giving me this, for giving me her. Thank you for coming back, for not giving up." Ahead, Lily was singing to herself, twirling in the parking lot, her voice carrying on the wind. She had her mother's spirit, her father's resilience, and now, finally, her grandfather's love. Daniel looked back one last time at Rebecca's grave, at the flowers and the bench, and the oak tree where new life chirped in the branches. "We did it, Becca. We became a family." And somewhere in the space between memory and hope, he could have sworn he heard her laugh. Delighted, proud, free.
The rain had stopped, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the cemetery, and Daniel Carter walked toward his daughter and his future, no longer afraid of what love might cost. Because he'd learned the truth. Love didn't bankrupt you. It made you whole. Family isn't just who we're born to, it's who shows up, who stays, who fights to make things right. What does family mean to you? Share your story in the comments below, and if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional journeys every week. Let me know the country you are watching from. Thank you for being here, and see you in the next video.